Hello, everyone. Tonight we are going to take a long, slow walk through the cheese aisle, and not just to stare at the fancy labels or wonder how a single wedge can cost more than a decent bottle of wine. No, we're heading in with purpose. Because if you're over 60 and still sprinkling cheese on your salad or throwing a slice into your sandwich like it's 1983, I've got news for you. You probably won't survive the cheese aisle unless you know exactly what to avoid and what to load into your basket. I know, dramatic, but here's the reality. Cheese isn't just cheese anymore. Some are packed with life-extending nutrients. Others, they're basically edible slow-motion landmines. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is over there. I read all of it, even the one guy who called my voice dairy smooth with a touch of regret. That was oddly poetic. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. I'll never forget the first time I stood in the cheese section as a senior. It was my 60th birthday, and I thought I'd treat myself to a nice brie or something creamy and expensive. Instead, I left the store with a small panic attack and a YouTube search history full of phrases like cheese that won't kill me. What started as a casual curiosity turned into a full-blown obsession. You see, more than 85% of adults over 60 still eat cheese multiple times a week, yet almost none of us are taught how different types of cheese affect aging bodies. Not just diet effects. I'm talking about stroke risk, blood pressure, dementia, digestion, real measurable consequences. And it's wild how one wrong cheese habit can quietly chip away at your health for years without you noticing a thing. Most of us grew up thinking cheese was just cheese. It was either yellow or white, came in a block or a slice, and that was about it. My grandmother used to say, if it melts, it's food. And bless her heart, but that rule just doesn't cut it anymore. There's a truth about the modern cheese market. It's not designed with your health in mind. It's built for shelf life, marketing sheen, and fast flavor. That's why I decided to dive deep into European cheese-making traditions, digestive science, cardiovascular research, and even a little microbial biochemistry, which, believe me, is way funkier than blue cheese ever dreamed of being. So tonight, I'm going to walk you through everything I've learned, one cheese at a time. I'll tell you which 4 cheeses absolutely earned their place on my plate, and which 4 nearly gave me a stroke just from reading their ingredient labels. I'll share what doctors still argue about, what old farmers swear by, and what I've actually felt in my own energy, sleep, and digestion since changing how I eat cheese. Here's a weird one to start us off. Did you know that in Japan, vitamin K2 from fermented dairy is one of the most consistent predictors of longevity? It's not calcium, not protein, not even vitamin D. It's K2, which no one talks about in North America unless they're selling supplements on the internet. And the best source of it? Aged cheeses made the old way, with raw milk and patience. Another random tidbit, processed cheese slices, those bright orange singles you grew up with, are still legal in North America, even though they're banned in parts of Europe. And yes, we'll be talking about that slice of evil later. But back to the good stuff. The cheeses that not only don't hurt you, but might actually help you live better, longer, and stronger. And we'll start with one that sounds like a misspelling, but might just be the best kept secret in your local specialty shop. Aged Gouda. Let me be clear though, this isn't a one slice of Gouda makes you immortal kind of video. I'm not a guru. I'm just a guy with a heartbeat, a craving for savory things, and a colon that now prefers postbiotics over pizza. And I get it. Food is emotional. Cheese is comfort. There's a reason we eat it when we're sad, when we're celebrating, when we don't feel like cooking. But imagine if that comfort food could also comfort your arteries and bones. That's where this journey is heading. We've all heard the old school wisdom, everything in moderation. And sure, that's cute until you realize moderation means something different when your body starts whispering, hey, maybe don't clog the blood vessels today. So buckle up, or better yet, unbuckle and stretch out. I'm going to give you the full cheese report, from the grassiest pastures of Europe to the scariest plastic-wrapped shelves in your supermarket. You're going to leave tonight knowing exactly what to grab, what to avoid, and maybe, just maybe, how to still love cheese without ending up with a cardiologist's business card in your wallet. So I picked up a chunk of aged Gouda, once thinking it would be a special occasion cheese. You know, the kind you pair with dried figs and pretend to know things about wine. But oh man, that thing changed my entire approach to eating. Let me set the scene for you. I'm sitting on my patio, a plate of sliced apples in one hand, the tiniest sliver of deep amber Gouda in the other. I let it sit on my tongue, and suddenly it's like fireworks. Sharp, nutty, caramel-like, and just the faintest whisper of crystals crunching between my teeth. And not to sound dramatic, but I swear I felt smarter for a second. But it wasn't just the flavor that got me, it was what I learned after. Aged Gouda, 18 months minimum, is basically a functional food for seniors. This cheese isn't your ordinary dairy snack. It's undergone a long fermentation and aging process that breaks down its proteins into smaller fragments called peptides. Why does that matter? Because after 60, your digestive system doesn't exactly run like a teenager's. These peptides are easier to absorb, easier to process, and they don't cause the stomach drama that a younger, gooier cheese might. Now here's where it gets oddly exciting. Aged Gouda is rich in vitamin K2, specifically the MK7 form. Most people don't even know K2 exists, but it's absolutely critical. Think of it as the calcium traffic cop in your body. It grabs all that calcium floating around and yells, "Hey, bones are that way, not the arteries." Studies, especially ones from Japan and the Netherlands, have shown that people with higher K2 intake have far less calcified plaque in their arteries. That means better circulation, less stroke risk, and bones that don't give up on you after a sneeze. An ounce of this stuff gives you 75 micrograms of K2. That's more than most North Americans get in a week, unless they're chomping natto, which, no offense to the Japanese, smells like what I imagine regret would smell like if it were food. Let's throw in another fun detail. Gouda's got conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA, which sounds like a 90s diet pill, but is actually a powerful fatty acid. CLA has been shown to reduce fat buildup, improve immunity, and in some studies, even fight tumor growth. And Gouda gets even better as it ages, with nearly no lactose left by the time it hits 18 months or older. That means those of us with a dairy sensitivity can often enjoy it without any, let's call it digestive blowback. The bacteria that age it also create something magical. Postbiotics. Not probiotics, not prebiotics. Postbiotics. These are byproducts of the fermentation that can help calm inflammation, support your immune system, and maybe even improve mood by interacting with the vagus nerve, the highway between your gut and brain. I mean cheese that makes you happy without being fried? That's rare. Here's a bit of old school wisdom I remembered from my uncle. He used to say, if your food doesn't get better with time, it probably isn't food. And aged Gouda? It gets better. Every slice is a history lesson. So how do I eat it now? I cut a piece, maybe an ounce or so, and let it sit at room temperature for about 20 minutes. That lets the oils rise, the aroma open up, and the flavor expand in a way cold cheese just can't offer. I pair it with sliced apple or pear, sometimes even a handful of walnuts. The fiber from the fruit slows the absorption of the fats, and the natural prebiotics in apples feed the postbiotics in the cheese. It's like they were made to be together. Also, quick side note, have you ever noticed how some cheeses make you sleepy? It's not just the food coma talking. Aged cheeses like Gouda are full of tyrosine and tryptophan, amino acids that your body uses to produce dopamine and melatonin. So yes, your night cheese could literally be helping you sleep. But let me give you an off-topic gem. The world's oldest known cheese was found in an Egyptian tomb and dated back over 3,200 years. It was made from a mix of cow and sheep milk, and it was loaded with a bacteria that causes brucellosis. Delicious and deadly. So, yeah, always check the label, or maybe just skip tomb cheese. Now, is aged Gouda perfect? Not quite. It's still cheese, so you don't want to go overboard. I stick to 1 or 2 ounces tops. That gives me the nutritional goal without going full cholesterol cowboy. And trust me, I tried eating half the block once and felt like I needed to walk laps just to digest it. But overall, aged Gouda earns its place in the yes please column of my fridge. It's a legit superfood dressed up in a tasty, classy coat. And as someone who once thought superfoods were a marketing scam, I stand corrected, with a cheese knife in hand. Oh, and if you want one final mental image to remember this cheese by, aged Gouda is the Clint Eastwood of cheeses. Old, bold, a little dry, maybe even crusty, but you respect the hell out of it. So I'm standing in the middle of an Italian market in Toronto, not even supposed to be buying cheese, just killing time before my haircut, and I lock eyes with a hard beige wedge that looked more like a brick than food. Parmigiano Reggiano, not the pre-grated, sawdusty kind from a plastic shaker, but the real deal, imported, aged, dense as a moon rock. The guy behind the counter said, "You want to try?" In that way, that sounds like a dare. And I said yes. One tiny bite, one tiny flavor-packed, 32-month aged miracle. I swear it hit like a nutritional backhand to the face. Salt crystals popping, a deep umami hit, and just enough crunch to make you feel like you're doing something special with your life. I walked out with a $22 hunk of it and no regrets. And that wedge taught me more than most doctors have about food and aging. Parmigiano Reggiano, if made properly, aged at least 24 months from unpasteurized milk with no additives, isn't just cheese. It's an edible multivitamin. Seriously, 1 ounce gives you about 10 grams of protein, nearly 330 min of calcium, and minerals like phosphorus and magnesium in the exact right ratios for absorption. That's not me guessing. Italian researchers proved it. They actually compared calcium from Parmigiano to calcium pills and found the cheese won by a landslide. I love that. Imagine getting stronger bones from something that also makes pasta taste divine. Show me a calcium tablet that makes risotto better. But here's the twist that really sold me. Parmigiano's proteins are predigested. Thanks to its long fermentation, the amino acids are broken down into forms your body absorbs almost instantly. No bloating, no heaviness, just efficient fuel. This is a godsend when your stomach enzymes start going on early retirement. The cheese is also naturally lactose-free. That's right, none of the bloaty sugar that sends sensitive folks running, and it contains all 9 essential amino acids. That makes it a complete protein, the kind bodybuilders spend money on and seniors forget they need. Trust me, after 60, protein isn't just about muscles. It's about healing, mood, immune function, and not feeling like you've been hit by a truck every time you stand up too fast. Let's talk brain health, though. Parmigiano has tyramine, which your brain converts into neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine. Basically, cheese that keeps you sharp. There's also something called casomorphins, peptides that have opioid-like effects, not in the lose your job and teeth kind of way, but in a calming, mildly euphoric way. That's why some people swear cheese helps them sleep. Old-school Italian wisdom even says a piece of parm after dinner helps digestion and keeps you dreaming sweet. Here's the off-topic fact of the night. During World War II, Parmigiano was used as a barter item. People paid rent with it. Farmers traded it for services. Why? Because it lasted long, packed nutrients, and everyone wanted it. In other words, it was the Bitcoin of fascist-era Italy. Now let's talk controversy. Some nutritionists argue aged cheeses are inflammatory due to histamines and saturated fats. But the studies are mixed, and a lot depends on which cheese and how much. Parmigiano, due to its purity and the way it's digested, often gets a pass, even in anti-inflammatory diets. This is still an open academic debate. Does the food matrix of aged cheese buffer its negative effects? Some say yes. Others haven't had real parm. There's a ritual to eating this stuff. Don't shred it with a grater like you're topping a pizza. Break it into little uneven shards with a short cheese knife. That preserves the texture and keeps the crystalline crunch intact. The Italians say eating it this way also slows you down, gives your brain time to register the flavor, and keeps you from inhaling 3 ounces before you notice. I usually eat parm at night. After dinner, just a small chunk. I'll drizzle a drop or two of aged balsamic on it, like the syrupy, dark kind you only use on special occasions. That combo does something magic, something almost spiritual. I sleep better, I digest better, and honestly, I just feel older in a good way. Like I've earned this moment of calm, this final salty bite that ties the day together. Of course, you don't need to drop $30 for the fanciest import. Just make sure the label says Parmigiano Reggiano not Parmesan style or grating cheese. If it's vacuum sealed, stamped with the rind number, and smells like warm nuts and caramel, you're golden. Also, fun trick, keep a wedge in the freezer. It won't go bad, and you can shave it directly onto hot food. It melts slightly but keeps its signature bite. If Gouda is the wise old friend you call when you're sick, Parmigiano is the godfather who shows up in a tailored suit and says, "Let me handle this." Powerful, reliable, and not to be messed with. One more note before we move on. If you've never had a parm rind simmered in super risotto, you're missing out. That hard edge softens and releases all sorts of umami goodness. It's like recycling but for flavor. So yes, Parmigiano Reggiano has officially joined my fridge's VIP shelf, right between the raw cheddar and the night jar of olives, and it earns its spot every single time. If Parmigiano Reggiano is the godfather of smart aging, then raw cheddar, when done right, is the scrappy underdog who grew up on a farm, spent time reading philosophy in a cabin, and now runs a wildly successful organic brand out of Vermont. That's the vibe. I stumbled onto raw cheddar at a local farmer's market, tucked between a honey stand and a very enthusiastic kombucha vendor. The label read, "Raw milk cheddar, grass-fed, aged 60-plus days." I squinted. Raw milk? I asked the lady behind the table, half expecting a lecture on unpasteurized dangers. Instead, she shrugged and said, "The cows eat wild clover. We don't heat the milk, and it tastes better than anything in your fridge." Bold claim. Naturally, I bought a block. The first thing you notice about good raw cheddar isn't the taste, it's the texture. It's firm, slightly crumbly, and has that gentle resistance when you bite in. The flavor, sharp but not aggressive, creamy without being cloying, and it lingers, not in an awkward first date way, but in a remember me kind of way. And the kicker, I felt good after eating it. No bloat, no sluggishness, just balanced. It was like my body whispered, "Thanks, we needed that." Raw cheddar, when made from the milk of grass-fed cows and aged properly, minimum 60 days, often longer, is a nutritional dark horse. Unlike pasteurized cheddar, which loses enzymes and beneficial bacteria during heat treatment, raw cheddar retains its full enzymatic activity. That means it can help you digest itself, which is exactly the kind of food I want as I age. Less work, more reward. And let's talk CLA again, conjugated linoleic acid. This fatty acid is 5 times higher in grass-fed cheddar than in conventional stuff. CLA helps reduce body fat, improve immune function, and has shown anti-cancer effects in animal models. And it's not some fringe claim. It's been studied since the 80s. You want CLA in your diet, and raw cheddar is one of the tastiest ways to get it. It's also got omega-3s. The same heart-healthy fats in salmon? Yep. Cows that eat grass instead of grain produce milk rich in these essential fats. That translates directly into your cheese. Omega-3s reduce inflammation, support cognitive function, and help regulate blood pressure. 3 things I'd very much like to keep intact into my 70s and beyond. Here's where things get interesting. Raw cheddar is also full of fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and most importantly, K2. You'll remember that from our Gouda talk. K2 helps direct calcium to your bones instead of letting it calcify in your arteries. But the cheddar version often comes in MK4 form, which is particularly potent and active in the human body. It's the kind of vitamin you can't get from a multivitamin. It has to come from food, from something that was alive. Now here's something almost no one tells you. Cheddar made from raw milk actually contains probiotics. That's right, cheese with gut-healing bacteria. We're talking lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, and friends. These bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which nourish your colon and reduce inflammation throughout the body. Butyrate, by the way, is one of the compounds currently being studied for its effects on mental health. Yes, gut health, Arsham brain health. It's not a meme, it's science. Let me sneak in a weird off-topic fact here. There's an underground movement of cheese affineurs, that's French for professional cheese maturers, who believe raw milk cheeses are spiritually superior. They say these cheeses carry the memory of the animal. Bit much, maybe. But hey, whatever gets you passionate about cheddar. So what's the downside? Well, raw cheddar isn't always easy to find. It's often sold only at farmers markets, health food stores, or specialty grocers, and it's pricier because good things should be. Also, legally in Canada and many U.S. states, raw milk cheeses must be aged at least 60 days to reduce the risk of harmful bacteria, which is a good thing. Time in this case really is the purifier. Now, there is still debate in the food science community. Some argue that raw milk cheeses pose a microbial risk, Listeria, E. coli, and the usual suspects. But if the milk is handled correctly and aged properly, the risk drops dramatically. Many European countries consume raw milk cheeses without incident. And let's be real, if you're eating gas station sushi but worried about farm cheese, we need to have a different conversation. How do I eat it? Room temp, always. I never microwave it. Heat above 120 degrees Celsius kills the good stuff. I'll cube it, pair it with pickled vegetables like sauerkraut or kimchi, fermented buddies unite, and call it a snack. If I'm feeling fancy, I'll layer it on a slice of sprouted grain toast with a drizzle of honey and cracked black pepper. Sounds odd, but it'll change your life. One more thing. The fat in raw cheddar actually helps absorb the fat-soluble vitamins and antioxidants from your other food. It's like a nutrition multiplier. Think of it as your digestive system's wingman. So yeah, raw cheddar is the real MVP of my cheese drawer. When I eat it, I feel like I'm eating something that was made, not manufactured. It's food that respects your body and demands respect in return. Cheddar was once a symbol of American snacking mediocrity. But when it's raw and grass-fed, it becomes wisdom wrapped in wax. I had never given Gruyere much thought, honestly. It always struck me as that fancy cheese people melt into fondue or slide into upscale grilled cheese sandwiches. Seemed a bit high maintenance, like the kind of dairy that wears a monocle. But then I found a Swiss brand at a little European deli that promised it was made from raw alpine milk, aged over a year, and full of natural glutathione precursors. That last bit stopped me. Glutathione? That's the master antioxidant your body relies on for detoxification, cellular repair, and immune support. And here it was, being whispered about in a cheese description. Well, I took it home, and when I tasted it, nutty, salty, a bit fruity, with that smooth, dense chew that says, yes, I've lived through the seasons. I knew I'd just added a new VIP to my fridge's top shelf. Gruyere is a cheese that doesn't just taste sophisticated, it is sophisticated biochemically speaking. It's made using a bacterium called Propionibacterium freudenreichi, which aside from making those charming little holes, creates propionic acid, a compound linked to reducing inflammation and supporting metabolic health. When that cheese matures for 12 months or more, it also cultivates lactopeptides. These have a mild ACE inhibitor effect, which to the uninitiated means they help lower blood pressure naturally. Yeah, cheese that acts like a gentle, edible beta blocker. I once had a friend say, but isn't Swiss cheese just fancy plastic with holes? And I had to break it to him. What he'd been buying was the American knockoff version. Real Gruyere is a protected cheese. It must come from raw milk, from cows that graze on the flora-rich hills of Switzerland. You can literally taste the grass, herbs, and altitude. It's like the Alps went on holiday in your mouth. Here's the part that made me double down on Gruyere. The B12 content. It's off the charts. This cheese contains more B12 than almost any other food source. Perfect for older adults, since our ability to absorb B12 from food naturally declines with age. That means more support for your nerves, your brain, and your red blood cells with every bite. Now let's get nerdy. Gruyere's amino acid profile is impressive. It's high in cysteine and glycine, which your liver combines to create, you guessed it, glutathione. This is a big deal because our bodies produce less and less glutathione with age, which makes us more susceptible to oxidative damage. The idea that Gruyere helps boost your internal cleanup crew? Wildly underrated. The old school wisdom here comes from a Swiss farmer I once chatted with at a food expo. He said, eat cheese from animals that ate the earth, not from animals fed pellets in a box. It stuck with me. Gruyere cows roam alpine meadows. They eat grass, herbs, and wildflowers. And that biodiversity ends up in the milk, then in the cheese, and finally in you. Now, I've mentioned before how digestion slows down with age. Gruyere, when aged properly, has already done most of the heavy lifting. Its proteins are broken down into small peptides, ready for immediate absorption. Your body doesn't have to spend half the afternoon figuring out what to do with it. That means less bloat, better nutrient uptake, and more energy post-lunch, which I'll take over a nap any day. You want another odd fact? Gruyere is one of the few cheeses regularly used in clinical feeding programs for undernourished elderly patients in Europe. It's dense in nutrients, easy to chew, and has a high protein efficiency ratio. Basically, it gives the most benefit for the least digestive work. Now, there's a bit of academic wrestling around whether aged cheese increases inflammation because of its saturated fat. But in Gruyere's case, the presence of anti-inflammatory compounds, B vitamins, and omega-3s, thanks to those alpine cows, helps offset the concern. Plus, portion matters. 2 ounces won't hurt you. 2 pounds? Call your doctor. So how do I eat it? Gruyere melts like a dream, so I'll layer it into warm soup. Not boiling, just steamy, so the heat wakes up the cheese without nuking its precious compounds. Or I'll eat it with a slice of whole grain sourdough. The fiber helps slow fat absorption and improves nutrient synergy. Sometimes I add a swipe of mustard and a slice of apple for tang and crunch. Oh, and let me tell you, Gruyere and scrambled eggs is like taking your breakfast to therapy and walking out healed. Storage tip: wrap it in parchment, not plastic. Let it breathe. It's a living food. Suffocating it in cling film is like wrapping a concert pianist's hands in duct tape. And yeah, it costs more, but so does replacing your knees. I'll pay a little extra for something that makes my arteries feel like I didn't live through the deep-fried 80s. In the end, Gruyere is what I call a body whisperer food. It's subtle. It doesn't scream its benefits, but eat it consistently, and your joints, your gut, your energy levels, they notice. It's not just cheese, it's a quiet, alpine apology for all the Velveeta we've endured. Now let's switch gears. We've floated through the Swiss Alps, danced with postbiotics, and aged gracefully alongside golden wedges of nutritional wonder. But now we're diving headfirst into the fluorescent-lit danger zone of the supermarket. You know the one, where cheese comes in plastic sleeves and smells suspiciously like nothing. And topping this pyramid of cheese sins, those classic processed cheese slices. I'm not here to judge your childhood. We all had the grilled cheese phase. I grew up thinking those shiny little squares were real food. And maybe once upon a time, that belief was harmless. But now looking at what actually goes into those slices, it's like biting into a lab experiment with a dairy disguise. Let me paint the picture. Processed cheese slices, those individually wrapped orange squares, are made from less than 50% actual cheese. The rest? A gooey symphony of emulsifiers, preservatives, colorants, and synthetic fats. We're talking sodium phosphates, sorbic acid, natamycin, and other substances that sound more like names from a sci-fi villain roster than pantry ingredients. One slice might not kill you, but the real problem is what happens when this stuff becomes a habit. 2 slices contain over 600 milligrams of sodium, and not the regular table kind. This is sodium phosphate, a form that's been linked to kidney damage, accelerated aging, and increased arterial stiffness. It basically ages your insides like they're being fast-tracked for an early retirement. And if that's not unsettling enough, take a closer look at the melting quality. That perfect, unnatural ooze, that comes courtesy of emulsifying salts like polyphosphates and carboxymethylcellulose. These disrupt the gut lining. We're talking leaky gut, the kind that lets toxins slip into the bloodstream, triggering inflammation that shows up everywhere, from joint pain to brain fog. Let me throw in a peculiar fact here. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration allows food labels to round down trans fat to 0 grams per serving if it's under 0.5 grams. So guess what? You might be eating trans fats daily and not even know it. These fats have been clearly linked to heart disease, yet the label says 0. Sleight of hand, dairy addition. The marketing doesn't help. Ever seen a box that says good source of calcium or high in protein? Technically true, but misleading. The forms of calcium in these slices are often calcium sulfate or calcium phosphate, which are not as easily absorbed. And the protein, it's been chemically denatured during ultra-high heat processing, meaning your body works harder to make sense of it. Even the color is a lie. Most processed slices are dyed with yellow 5 and yellow 6. Synthetic colorants linked in some studies to behavioral issues, allergies, and possible carcinogenic effects. And that glossy, moist sheen on the surface? That's not dairy. That's emulsified oil doing its best impression of cheese. Let's check in with some old school wisdom. My grandfather used to say, if you can't pronounce it, don't put it in your mouth. He lived to 94 and didn't eat anything he couldn't grow, cook, or identify. Processed cheese slices would have confused the hell out of him. And honestly, he was right. And here's the open debate in the scientific community. Do small daily exposures to food additives contribute to chronic inflammation and disease over time? Some experts say the dose is too low to matter. Others argue that daily compounding is the real issue, especially for older adults whose immune systems and detox organs are already taxed. So if you're over 60, do you really want to gamble on that debate? Here's what blew my mind. One slice of this cheese contains preservatives that can suppress beneficial gut bacteria. Yes, sorbic acid and natamycin, added to keep mold away, can also impact your own internal ecosystem. You might be killing the very microbes your probiotic yogurt is trying to cultivate. So how do I treat these now? Like candy, occasional, nostalgic, and completely unnecessary. If I'm desperate for a grilled cheese, I reach for a slice of aged cheddar or even melt some raw Gruyere. Real cheese melts. Real cheese browns. Real cheese smells like life. Pro tip, if it peels like a Post-it note, it's not real food. There's also something quietly unsettling about how long these slices last. I once found a pack behind my freezer, 2 years old, untouched, still orange, still soft. I didn't know whether to be amazed or horrified. Probably both. Cheese should not outlive relationships. For those of you thinking, but my grandkids love it, I get it. It's convenient, it's nostalgic, it melts perfectly, but so does plastic. You wouldn't feed your family melted plastic, would you? A good cheese doesn't need artificial flavor. It doesn't need preservatives. It doesn't come wrapped like a slice of shame. If Gruyere is a dignified old professor, then processed cheese slices are a bad impersonation of wisdom, a synthetic smile with nothing behind it. So yes, say goodbye to the slices. Your arteries will thank you. Your microbiome will throw a party. And your palate? It might just remember what real food tastes like. Let me start with a confession. I used to love blue cheese. Like, love it. I'd crumble it on salads, pair it with pears, even sneak it onto steak. That sharp, pungent aroma. I thought it was the scent of sophistication. But then I hit 60 and everything changed. What once tasted complex and cultured suddenly turned into a ticket to bloating, headaches, and an occasional full-blown face flush. I brushed it off at first, maybe just a bad batch. But the symptoms kept stacking up, and the more I dug into the science, the more I realized blue cheese might be doing some people a lot more harm than good, especially if you're in the gracefully aging club. Here's the lowdown. Blue cheese, like Roquefort, Stilton, or Gorgonzola, gets its flavor and veiny drama from Penicillium roqueforti, a mold added during fermentation. It's what gives blue cheese its strong aroma and tang. But that same mold also produces mycotoxins, which are chemical byproducts that can mess with your immune system, liver, and gut, especially in sensitive individuals. But wait, you say, aren't mycotoxins in small amounts harmless? That's part of the debate. Some food scientists claim the levels in blue cheese are too low to matter. Others point out that mycotoxins can accumulate, especially in older adults whose detox systems slow down with age. If your liver and kidneys aren't processing as efficiently as they once did, even tiny amounts of toxins could have long-term effects. And then there's tyramine, a naturally occurring compound that forms when proteins break down, especially in aged cheeses. Tyramine can spike blood pressure, and in people who take certain medications, like MAO inhibitors for depression or Parkinson's, it can cause hypertensive crises, not the kind of surprise anyone over 60 wants during dinner. Oh, and if you suffer from migraines, tyramine is notorious for triggering them. I learned this the hard way after a blue cheese and beet salad sent me to bed for 6 hours with a headache that felt like a jazz band had set up shop behind my left eye. Blue cheese also contains histamines, and not just a little. In fact, it has some of the highest histamine levels of any cheese. Histamines can provoke allergic-like symptoms, rashes, hives, digestive discomfort, even mood swings. And here's the kicker. Histamine sensitivity tends to get worse with age. So even if you've handled blue cheese like a champ for decades, your body might suddenly decide, yeah, not today. Let's throw in an old school wisdom moment here. My great aunt used to say, if it smells like socks, maybe don't eat it. And while she wasn't a microbiologist, she was onto something. Our senses are hardwired to detect spoilage, and blue cheese kind of dances on that line. The strong smell? That's your brain raising an eyebrow, even if your taste buds cheer it on. Now there's one more layer here, the sodium content. Blue cheese packs upwards of 400 milliliters of sodium per ounce, and that sharp, salty taste often tricks people into using more than they realize. And too much of sodium, as we know, raises blood pressure, taxes the kidneys, and increases stroke risk, already a concern in seniors. There's also something deeply unsettling about how hard it is to tell if blue cheese has gone bad. The mold is supposed to be there, right? So when spoilage starts creeping in, it's almost impossible to see the difference. That means you could very well be eating something that's past its prime. And unlike an aged cheddar, blue cheese doesn't exactly grow old with dignity. Now here's a strange but true fact. Researchers have found that some strains of the mold used in blue cheese can survive digestion and alter your gut microbiome. No one knows if this is good or bad yet. It's a wide-open academic debate. But if you're already dealing with IBS, Crohn's, or even mild GI sensitivity, is that a risk you want to take? Let's talk real-world symptoms. After ditching blue cheese for 3 months, I noticed fewer headaches, better sleep, and smoother digestion. My skin even looked clearer. Coincidence? Maybe. But when I reintroduced it, all those symptoms tiptoed back in like old debts. Now don't get me wrong. If you love blue cheese and it doesn't mess with you, live your life. But for anyone over 60, especially if you've got hypertension, migraines, GI issues, or are on medication, it might be worth switching it out. Alternatives? Aged cheeses like Parmigiano or Gruyere offer complexity without the mold. If you miss the tang, try a little goat cheese. Lower in histamines, easier to digest. Or go for feta made from sheep's milk. It's salty, funky, and easier on the system. Here's my new rule of thumb. If a cheese could double as a science experiment, I eat it sparingly, or not at all. You can romanticize blue cheese all you want. Say it's bold, say it's brave, say it's the Picasso of the cheese world. But at this point in my life, I'm aiming for balance over bravado. A sharp mind, a steady heart, and a gut that doesn't start a protest at 3 a.m. Because no cheese, no matter how cultured, should leave you wondering if it's love or just lactose-laced betrayal. So now you've heard it all, from Alpine masterpieces to plastic-wrapped impersonators, from cholesterol-balancing cheese heroes to moldy little health risks hiding in fancy names. But here's the truth. It's not just about which cheeses to embrace or which to throw in the trash. It's about the how, the why, and the when. That's what makes all the difference when you're over 60 and trying to eat in a way that adds years to your life and life to your years. The biggest shift for me wasn't just in switching cheeses, it was in becoming intentional. No more grabbing whatever looked shreddy or creamy or good with crackers. Now I choose cheeses the same way I choose my friends, based on how they make me feel after the high wears off. Let's talk about pre-shredded cheese in bags because I promised to address this cheese aisle scam, and oh boy, this one hurts. It seems so innocent, right? You're in a rush, you want something for taco night, and boom, there's a plastic pouch promising fine melt and real cheese. But what they don't print in big letters? The additives that keep those shreds from clumping. You know that powdery stuff? That's cellulose, a plant fiber often sourced from wood pulp. Not a joke. It's legal. It's flavorless, and your body can't digest it. At best, it dilutes the cheese. At worst, it interferes with absorption of the nutrients you thought you were getting. Then there's potato starch, calcium sulfate, and the dreaded natamycin, an antifungal that works overtime to keep mold at bay. Problem is, it also messes with your gut microbiome. The same friendly bacteria we've spent the whole series trying to preserve with fermented foods and aged cheese. Old school wisdom? If it doesn't rot, it's not food. That's what my grandmother used to say. She was the queen of root cellars and lived into her 90s. Her cheese came in blocks, not bags. And yet, Convenience makes us lazy. I get it. We're tired, we've got things to do, grandkids to feed, appointments to keep. But laziness at the grocery store can turn into inflammation, fatigue, and silent damage to your heart and brain. It's not dramatic, it's just biology. So here's what I do now. I buy blocks. I shred by hand. I keep portions modest, 1 to 2 ounces per meal max, and I always ask myself, is this cheese working for me or against me? I've also started paying attention to pairings. Aged Gouda with sliced green apple, raw cheddar with fermented pickles, Parmigiano with walnuts or balsamic, Gruyere with whole grain sourdough. These combos don't just taste amazing, they boost nutrient absorption and keep your gut happy. And then there's when I eat cheese. No more scarfing it on an empty stomach. I time it with a meal, I chew slowly, and I actually take a moment to enjoy the flavor. Sounds basic, but it's kind of revolutionary when you've spent most of your life eating on autopilot. The strange, off-topic wisdom I picked up recently? The Japanese term shokunin, it refers to the artisan spirit of doing something with complete focus, pride, and precision. Even the small stuff. So now I try to approach cheese like a shokunin would. I serve it on a real plate. I sit down. I breathe. That alone has changed how my body responds. And yes, I still indulge once in a while. A dollop of brie, a smear of goat's cheese, even a tiny sliver of blue when I know I'll be alone and near a bathroom. But it's not mindless anymore. It's deliberate. It's adult. What do I tell people now when they ask, should I even eat cheese at this age? My answer, absolutely. But eat the right ones in the right way with the right respect. Because the right cheese can support your bones, boost your immune system, improve your mood, and make you fall in love with food all over again. The wrong cheese? It can undo all your hard work, sabotage your heart, and leave you wondering why you're so tired all the time. This isn't about fear, it's about power. Food is power, and cheese in particular is potent stuff. It can be medicine or mischief. So I leave you with this simple strategy. Buy blocks, not bags. Choose aged over processed. Let your cheese breathe before eating. Pair it with whole gut-loving foods. Listen to your body. And above all, respect the craft. Someone, somewhere, aged that wedge with patience and care. Honor it by eating with the same intention. Now that we've wandered through the peaks and valleys of the dairy world, let's end on a quieter note. Cheese isn't just food, it's memory. It's the taste of childhood sandwiches, Sunday brunches, celebrations, comfort, and ritual. And just like us, it changes with age. It sharpens. It deepens. It gets more complex. Sometimes it stinks a little, and sometimes it's worth the wait. So as you turn out the lights tonight, let your mind wander to a cool wooden cellar somewhere in the mountains, where wheels of cheese sit aging patiently in silence. That patience, that care, it's in every bite. And you, my friend, deserve to treat yourself with the same care. Choose wisely, eat slowly, and never underestimate the power of a well-aged wedge. From my kitchen to yours, good night.